The night was heavy and silent. Stars shone above the small colony world, but on the ground, fear already spread like fire. The people of the village had seen the ships burning in the sky. They knew something terrible had landed. Then, from the forest line, came the sound. A roar. Not a simple animal call. Not the cry of a beast hunting food. This roar shook the very bones of those who heard it. Windows cracked. Dust fell from rooftops. Even the ground seemed to tremble. The villagers froze. Mothers pulled their children close. Soldiers raised their weapons, but their hands shook. Everyone knew that sound. It was the predator. The galaxy's most feared hunter. A creature that had destroyed entire colonies, broken armies, and walked through fire as if it was nothing. No one had ever tamed it. No one had ever survived its wrath once it chose its prey. And now, it was here. From the dark trees, it stepped into the village square. Tall, massive, covered in thick black scales that shimmered under the moonlight. Its eyes burned like two golden suns. Each breath it released was like the hiss of steam escaping a broken engine. The soldiers shouted, "Hold your fire." Their leaders had warned them, weapons would not stop this thing. They had seen footage before, blasters bouncing off its hide, explosives doing little more than making it angry. The predator stood still for a moment, towering over all. Then its head turned, sharp and sudden, like a machine locking on target. It saw movement. A small figure. From the side of the street, stepping out without fear or sense of danger, came a child. A human child. No more than 6 years old. The crowd gasped. A scream rose from somewhere. No. Get the child back. But it was too late. The child walked forward, holding a small toy in one hand. It was a simple thing, just a ball of light, glowing faintly. The toy flickered as the child moved. Step by step. Slow. Innocent. The predator's eyes locked onto the tiny figure. Its chest expanded. Muscles flexed. Then, the roar came again. Louder. Stronger. The air itself seemed to shake. The child's hair blew back from the force. Dust and leaves lifted into the air. Soldiers covered their ears. Some fell to their knees. But the child did not fall. The child did not cry. The small human only tilted their head, looking up at the monster as if it were not the galaxy's terror, but something different. Something lost. The predator stepped closer. The ground shook with each movement. The sound of claws scraping stone echoed across the square. Villagers held their breath. Some turned away, unable to watch what was surely about to happen. Closer. Closer. Now the predator stood directly over the human child. Its shadow swallowed the small figure completely. The monster lowered its head, jaws opening wide. Its teeth shone sharp and wet under the moonlight. One bite, one snap, and nothing would remain. The child looked up into the endless mouth of death. And then, the child moved. Slowly, carefully, the little human walked forward and placed their tiny arms around the predator's leg. A hug. A simple, innocent hug. Gasps filled the square. Soldiers raised weapons, thinking the predator would strike instantly. Mothers cried out in despair. Even the most hardened warriors looked away, expecting blood. But nothing happened. The predator froze. Its jaws hung open, but it did not bite. Its claws were raised, but they did not fall. Its golden eyes widened, glowing bright, confused. The child hugged tighter, rested their head against the hard-scaled leg. And the galaxy's most feared predator did nothing. Silence fell. A silence louder than the roar itself. The soldiers dared not breathe. The villagers stared. The predator's body trembled slightly, as if some memory or feeling long buried had been touched. Its roar had promised death. But now? Something impossible was happening. For the first time in history, the predator did not kill. It simply stood there, still as stone, as the human child held it close. And above, unseen by those on the ground, orbiting ships recorded every moment. Across the stars, eyes were watching. Across the galaxy, ears were listening. The impossible had happened. The roar that shook the night had not ended in blood. Instead, it had ended in silence. And in that silence, the galaxy itself seemed to wait. To wait for what came next. The galaxy's most feared predator stood frozen. Its golden eyes locked on the tiny arms wrapped around its leg. The child's hug was weak compared to its armor-hard scales, yet something about that touch made the monster hesitate. No one watching could believe it. Soldiers kept their weapons raised, waiting for the strike. Villagers clung to each other, some whispering prayers. But the predator did not move. Its massive body, built for war and destruction, now trembled under the soft weight of a child's arms. The child did not speak, did not scream, only held tighter, as if the predator was not a monster but something in need of comfort. 4 long, endless seconds, the world held its breath. Then the predator's roar broke again, yet this time, it was not the roar of rage. It was different. Lower. Softer. A deep rumbling sound, almost like the growl of an animal confused, maybe even hurt. The villagers flinched, but the child only rested their head against its leg. The predator's claws lowered. Its jaws, still dripping with saliva, closed slowly. The golden fire in its eyes dimmed, replaced by something unreadable. The galaxy had seen the predator as pure death for centuries. It was a beast no one controlled, a weapon that only destroyed. Yet here, before their eyes, it stood still under a human child's embrace. Orbiting ships broadcast the image across thousands of systems. On alien homeworlds, diplomats and soldiers stared in disbelief. On military stations, generals slammed fists on tables, demanding answers. And on faraway planets, simple people gasped, whispered, and shook their heads in wonder. The image was impossible. The predator, the untamable, unstoppable monster, was not killing. It was listening. The soldiers on the ground began to shout. "Pull the child away. Pull them back." But every time someone stepped forward, the predator turned its head sharply and let out a warning growl. The meaning was clear. The child was under its protection. Shock spread through the crowd. Even the bravest warriors lowered their weapons. Who would dare attack now, when the beast itself seemed to guard the very child they wanted to save? Minutes passed like hours. The predator did not move. The child yawned softly, as if nothing strange was happening, and kept hugging. The monster, confused, tilted its great head down closer, studying the tiny human. For the first time, those golden eyes did not look like fire. They looked curious. The child lifted their toy, the small glowing ball of light, and held it up to the predator. The glow reflected on its scaled face. Slowly, carefully, the predator lowered its head until its nose almost touched the toy. A sound like a low hum came from its throat. The villagers gasped again. The predator was not attacking. It was playing. In that moment, the impossible became undeniable. This was not a trick. This was not a pause before the kill. Something had changed inside the beast. Across the galaxy, leaders argued in shock. "It is dangerous," cried one alien emperor. "Destroy it before it learns," shouted another general. But others leaned closer to their screens and whispered, "No, this is proof. Humans are different." Because no other species had ever done this. No weapon, no trap, no chain had ever stopped the predator. And yet a simple human child, with nothing but a hug, had ended its roar. The universe began to whisper a new word. Miracle. Back in the village, the predator suddenly shifted. The soldiers tensed, but it did not harm the child. Instead, it lowered itself down, slowly, until it sat on its massive haunches. Dust rose around it, and the child was now resting against its side, small compared to its mountain-like body. The crowd could hardly breathe. The predator, once their terror, now sat calmly with the child leaning into it. Its tail curled protectively around them both. One soldier whispered, almost afraid of his own words. "It's protecting the human." Another muttered, "This cannot be real." But it was real. And the galaxy would remember it. The predator's roar had once been the sound of death. Tonight, that roar had become the sound of change. And the question now echoed through every mind, every system, every world. If a human child could touch the heart of a monster, what else could humans do? The predator sat in silence. Its golden eyes stayed on the small human resting against its scaled side. Soldiers still watched, ready to fight if things changed. Villagers did not dare move. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. But inside the beast, something else was happening. Memories. The hug had unlocked doors it had long buried. For as long as anyone in the galaxy remembered, the predator's kind had been weapons. Raised in darkness, trained in pain, forced to fight from the moment they could walk. Their lives were not their own. They were built for war, designed to destroy. And yet, long ago, before endless battles, before blood and fire, the predator had once known something different. It had once been more than a weapon. It remembered a nest of warm stone under the red sky of its homeworld. Small shapes, its cubs, climbing on its massive body, nipping at its tail, squealing with joy. It remembered a mate, strong and gentle, brushing its scales with care. It remembered nights where the roars were not for war, but for family. The hug of the human child was so small, so fragile. Yet it felt the same as those lost embraces. The predator growled softly, almost to itself. For centuries, it had tried to forget. Its family had been taken in a war that burned its world. Its cubs had been slain by machines, its mate lost in fire. From that day forward, it had been nothing but a tool of destruction. But this child, this tiny human, had touched the wound that never healed. It remembered what it had lost. The soldiers on the ground saw the change. The predator's body, once stiff and full of rage, now seemed tired. Heavy, as if carrying centuries of sorrow. One of the officers whispered, "Look at it, it's not just a beast. It's remembering something." Another shook his head. "Impossible. Monsters don't feel." But the truth was clear. The monster was feeling. And that truth shook the galaxy more than any weapon ever could. High above, alien leaders argued. "This cannot be allowed. If humans can tame the untamable, then they are more dangerous than any fleet," one cried. Others whispered in fear. "Or maybe, they are more powerful because they do not tame with weapons. They tame with something else." The word hung in the air like a secret too dangerous to say aloud. Love. Back on the planet, the predator lowered its head. The child laughed softly, as if they had no fear at all, and touched its nose. The beast closed its eyes. For the first time in countless years, it allowed itself to feel peace. But peace never lasts long in a galaxy built on war. From the edge of the square, new voices shouted. A squad of armored troops arrived, soldiers not from the colony, but from an empire that had long hunted the predator. They carried heavy weapons, the kind designed to end monsters. Their commander pointed. "Stand back. That thing dies here." The villagers screamed. The soldiers on the ground tried to argue, but the new arrivals did not listen. They only saw the beast, not the bond. The predator opened its eyes again. Golden fire returned. It saw the weapons. It saw the soldiers advancing. But this time, it did not roar for itself. It roared for the child. The sound shook the air once more, but this roar was different. It was not a roar of hunger, not a roar of death. It was a roar of warning. The predator placed one claw gently in front of the child, as if building a wall of flesh and scale. Anyone who wanted to reach the child would have to go through it first. Gasps filled the square. The soldiers hesitated. The child hugged tighter, their small arms clutching its leg, eyes wide but calm. And in that moment, every witness knew the truth. The predator was no longer just a monster. It was a protector. Across the galaxy, whispers spread faster than light. Humans had done what no empire, no machine, no army had ever done. They had touched the heart of the galaxy's most feared predator. The question now was not how. It was what happens next. The square was silent, except for the low growl of the predator. Its golden eyes glared at the soldiers who had come to kill it. Heavy weapons hummed as they powered up, glowing with energy strong enough to break mountains. The child stayed close, arms still wrapped around the beast's leg. To everyone watching, it was madness. The most dangerous creature in the galaxy was protecting a fragile human. But it was real. The predator did not move away. It stood tall, muscles coiled, tail curved around the child like a shield. Every breath it released sounded like thunder in the soldier's ears. The commander shouted, "Step aside. That thing is a monster. It has to die." No one moved. The villagers, once terrified, now stood frozen with a different kind of fear. Not fear of the predator, but fear of what would happen if anyone tried to hurt the child it guarded. The soldiers raised their weapons. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. And then, the predator roared. The sound was not rage alone. It was a warning that shook the very stars above. Windows shattered. Dust and fire burst from the ground. Every soldier stumbled, hands shaking as the force of the roar pressed against them. But the child did not move. The child held on tighter, as if telling the beast, "I'm here. Don't be afraid." For the first time in history, the predator's roar was not the cry of a killer. It was the cry of a guardian. The galaxy would never forget it. High above, the event spread across every channel, every frequency. Billions watched in silence. On distant worlds, alien families huddled around screens. On warships, soldiers stared at the impossible sight. A human child had turned the deadliest monster into a protector. And the galaxy began to argue. "This is a trick," some leaders shouted. "The predator is dangerous. Destroy it before it learns too much." But others whispered with awe, "No, it is not the predator that is dangerous. It is the humans. They can reach into the heart of death itself and bring out life." For ages, empires had feared humans for their quick minds, their stubbornness, their endless will to survive. But this was different. This was a power no weapon could copy. The power to connect. The power to love. Back on the colony, the soldiers with heavy weapons hesitated. Their commander barked orders, but no one fired. None of them wanted to be the first to test the beast's new fury. Then something even stranger happened. The predator stopped growling. Slowly, it lowered its massive head, pressing its nose against the child's tiny shoulder. A soft sound rumbled from its chest. Not a roar. Not a growl. Something gentler. A purr. The soldiers lowered their weapons. Some even dropped them in shock. The villagers stared in silence. And the galaxy wept. For the first time, they saw the predator not as a monster, but as a soul that had finally been touched. Weeks later, stories spread like wildfire. Songs were sung. Holos were shared. Across systems, people told each other, a human child tamed the untamable. The predator never left the child's side again. Where the child went, the beast followed. Once it had been a weapon of fear. Now it became a guardian of peace. Entire fleets that once fled at the sound of its roar now thought twice. Because that roar no longer meant death. It meant safety, for the child, and for those the child loved. And in the halls of power, galaxy leaders began to ask themselves dangerous questions. If a single human child could do this, what could humanity as a whole achieve? What monsters could they tame? What empires could they change? What wars could they end, not with fire, but with something far more unstoppable? Compassion. On the colony, life slowly returned to normal. But nothing would ever truly be the same. Each night, under the stars, the predator lay curled around the human child as they slept peacefully, safe in its shadow. And every night, the galaxy whispered about the miracle. The roar that once promised death now promised life. The hug that once seemed foolish had reshaped the stars. And the predator, once a nightmare, now stood as a legend. A legend born not of fear, but of a simple act of human love.